Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar. I'm just going to wait. There's a couple more people rolling in to join us today. Okay, so we seem to have our rolling enrollments. I don't know. Do you enroll in a webinar? Register. Our people have stopped rolling in, so we might kick things off. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar as part of our NAEEA webinar series. So today our presentation is increasing access and opportunity nesting enabling programs in senior schooling. So before we kick off into our presentation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay our respects to elders past and present and emerging, noting that this land was never ceded, and we extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining our presentation today. I'm on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja, and I have some colleagues who are also on Whadjuk country. And Fabi, which country are you on today? Wherever Fabi is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm on Yagra and group of people, blends. Thanks.
So, and I imagine many of you are on lots of different countries, and the project that we're talking about today is actually spread across Australia. So we're hoping to give some insights and knowledge from what we gained from the project that has taken us a couple of years, but some really good insights for the sector. So for those of you who aren't members of NAEEA, or the National Association of Enabling Educators Australia, you can sign up by following the QR code, which is on our screen right now, or going to our enablingeducators.org website. It's an excellent organisation to be part of. There's lots of special interest groups that can be aligned with your passion projects, professional development opportunities, small grants, and research projects, and a biannual conference, of which this year's conference is with us over on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja, between ECU and Murdoch University. So this is just some of the special interest groups that we have, looking at different elements of enabling, from assessment, curriculum, research, STEM, mental health and wellbeing, self-efficacy, maths, and a special interest group aligned with our project for today in school enabling. So the protocols for our webinars, as per usual, if you've been to one with us before, please keep your mic off, use the chat to post questions and comments. There will be lots of time at the end for Q&A, and this session has started being recorded. And once it has done its techie thing and I have time, it will be up on our YouTube page, or you can access the link through the NAEEA website. So our presenters that we have today, we have Selena from ECU, We have Dr. Fabiane Ross from University of Southern Queensland, and we have Anita Maclaurin from Murdoch University, myself, who was also involved in this project, and Joe Lisiandro has joined us as well, who is our STEM and quant expert who was also on the project. So I'm now going to hand over to Anita to kick things off.
Thanks, Ange. Yeah, okay. So in today's presentation, what we're going to be looking at is our research grant that we got. And in particular, we're going to have a look at the research design and the process of our project. We'd like to share with you the 3 major findings that we found from our project, and then explain a little bit about the implementation guide, which was one of the products, I suppose you could say, that came out of the project. And that's really to guide schools and universities if they want to look at in-school enabling programs. And then, yeah, as Ange said, we're going to have time for questions as well.
Can I get you to click to the next slide, Anita, and then I'll hand it to Fabi. But before we kind of kick off looking at those parts of the research project, just thought it was really important to kind of ground what we're looking at in terms of the enabling education discourse. This is really important because there's kind of 2 things happening in this space at the moment. And I think that Jonathan Green's statement that he made on LinkedIn back in June was really important in differentiating the historical discourse of enabling education that has been built through 3 decades of research and kind of what we're seeing with fee-free uni ready as a government policy. And I think the important distinction here is kind of backed up by what many of enabling educators have put forward in their research, but I'm just focusing on one quote from Dr. Trixie James in their paper about enabling students having hope. And it's really about that transformative practice that we thread through enabling programs, which is definitely a feature of in-school enabling programs. And so this picture here is really that pathway, is a pathway I took through a rainforest that seems wild and overgrown and lots of unknown but exciting opportunities, providing those really clear supports for students so that they don't go off track and continue towards their goal. So just want to frame that enabling education discourse before we get stuck into actually giving you kind of a look at the ACSES project at a top level. I just also want to note that the deeper detail is going to be shared at the NAEEA conference. Purpose of today is really just to give an overview. So I'll hand over to Fabi now to kind of take us through an introduction of the project.
Hello, can you hear me okay? So thanks everyone. So just get my notes. So really before getting to the aims of our research that we're sharing with you today, I think it's important to first define what in-school enabling programs are for anyone in the audience who might not be familiar with the term. So in-school enabling programs were created and starting in Western Australia, really as a response to requests from the secondary schooling sector to cater for a growing number of students who aspire to study at university. They want to study at university, but they lack access or they're not currently thriving in the ATAR-based system. So these programs are designed as direct pathways into undergraduate degrees and are delivered through university-school partnerships. And importantly, they are delivered while students are still completing their senior high school education. So in terms of what we aim and how this project came about, so we all are involved in school enabling programs in our universities, and we knew from our experiences running these programs and teaching that they do work and that they are beneficial for students, but we lacked the data. And we wanted large scale data to really demonstrate the benefit and what these programs can actually do for students. That's this project. And so what we actually aimed with the project was to understand the efficacy of in-school enabling programs as a pathway into higher education, how effective these programs are in supporting entry, not just entry, but entry and progress through higher education. And we also wanted to provide some guidance for Australian universities and schools which are looking into establishing programs. So how to do this effectively and in a scalable form. So it's also important to mention that this study was undertaken in alignment with the Australian University Accord, which call for expanded equitable pathways to meet the ambitious target of 55% attainment, bachelor attainment by 2050. So that's kind of the context. So I can move the next slide, right? I can do that. Okay. So this project was really the first national cross-institutional benchmarking and impact study of in-school enabling programs in Australia. So this was quite a large project. We collaborated across 4 universities, ECU, Murdoch, Southern Cross University, and University of Southern Queensland. And we worked with 94 partner high schools. And this project really was trying to examine the models and outcomes of in-school enabling programs, and with a special focus on impact for equity groups. So we examined curriculum assessment, delivery models across 4 universities. We analyzed academic outcomes and transition data to universities, and we explored student and educator perspectives on program efficacy and also socio-emotional impact. And as I mentioned before, we also aim to provide some guidance for the sector in terms of quality assurance and scalability. So we will get to the results a little bit later, but just as you can see here on this slide, just a little snapshot in terms of of the scale of the project and some early indications of success. So as you can see here, we examined 1,161 students, of which 660 progressed from the programs into undergraduate studies, and we had a 73% success rate across equity groups. So, but we'll expand that in a second. So in order to understand the there was multiple aspects of program effectiveness. So if we're thinking about program model design to university retention, so we actually, to be able to do that, we split the projects into 4 phases. And the 4 research questions that you can see here on the slide, they were used to guide the project. So I'll just let you actually read the research questions. But research question 1 was used to guide phase 1. Research questions 2 and 3 guided phase 2, and question 4 guided phase 3. I'll explain in a second what we did in each phase, but I'll just let you read the questions for a moment. Can I move to the next slide? Is that okay? Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we adopted a multi-phase mixed methodology approach to examine the models. And we gathered a multiple quantitative and qualitative data sets to evaluate efficacy throughout the 4 phases. So phase 1 was really, it was pretty much about benchmarking the programs. So we tried to understand the partnership models across the sector with a focus on curriculum design, delivery, and assessment. So during the benchmarking phase, we analyzed program objectives, learning outcomes, curriculum content, assessment method, and delivery method across institutions. So we're trying here to identify similarities and differences across the program. Phase 2, this was the big one with numbers, lots of numbers. So that's where we collected and analyzed university transition data, including retention, conversion, and success from 2021 to 2023 to compare and understand the efficacy of the different program models. So we compared academic outcomes of students within the 4 programs that we analyzed, but we also looked at first year of undergraduate studies success, and we also compared results with peers, with other students entering university through other pathways, from high school through other pathways, including post-school enabling programs and direct entry via ATAR pathways. And phase 3 was about exploring the voices and opinions of stakeholders. So here we had student surveys, student interviews, and interviews with educators, and we used a correlation and thematic analysis trying to understand the data. And then phase 4 was about bringing all of this together. So we tried to synthesize the findings from the 3 phases, and then trying to from this develop a comprehensive understanding of the program. But now I'll hand to Selena and Anita to break down and share some of the findings with us.
Great, thanks, Fabi. So really kind of getting stuck into that phase 2, I'm just going to give you a bit more information about those data sets that we explored through this project, and then just give you some high-level data again. At our NAEEA conference in December, this is going to be unpacked in a lot more detail, but obviously you are welcome to read our substantial report that we will put another link to at the end of this presentation. So we didn't just want to look at the students who came into an in-school enabling program and transitioned to university. It was really important to position them within the actual whole school leaver cohort for domestic students who commenced an undergraduate course at any of the 4 universities who are part of this project from 2022 to 2024. So that was our biggest data set that we looked at. We then also, it's really important, and it goes back to that enabling education discourse that I kind of set up a few slides ago, that we look at kind of success and retention rates for our equity students and our non-equity students as well across the 4 universities. This is really pivotal, and like Fabi said, it really leads into the discourse of the universities accord and what the current government is aiming for that 2050 projection. The next data set that we then broke down from that was the proportions of students in the in-school enabling programs across the 4 universities who belong to none, 1, 2 or more equity groups. And I'm going to show you some data around that in a moment. Plus we also cut the data, I don't know if that's the right word, Joe, to look at students who were in schools that were described as low SES and those who were situated in regional or remote areas. In particular, looking at therefore then focusing on our in-school enabling program students, we wanted to look at their completion rate of the actual programs. We wanted to then look at, from the students who completed the programs in year 11 or year 12, how many then converted to an undergraduate degree in the subsequent years. It might not be the year directly afterwards, because a lot of students do take a gap year, but the subsequent years. And then we also wanted to look at the actual student success rate of students within those individual programs. So I'm going to give you just some high level data on these next slides. Joe, please jump in and add anything as we go along, because very much you were involved with this quantitative side of the project, so thank you. So this is a really nice table that summarises, and it's been directly taken from the report, about just the sheer quantity of students that we looked at for that school leaver age domestic students. So those who are in school enabling programs, those students who did an enabling program post-school, which is what we are most familiar with at the moment, recent school leavers through an ATAR pathway, then through a non-ATAR pathway, and then those students who came into a university through another provider. So that was kind of our big data set to begin with. the next kind of number, and again, I think this is actually probably the most important piece. One of the most important pieces is looking at the equity and non-equity groups in terms of their success rate and retention rate into undergraduate courses. And so this is what I really love here, is the similarity in numbers, because I think when we're looking at success of students moving into undergraduate courses through in-school enabling programs, I always kind of have the thought when I'm speaking to schools, would they have reached university without our program? And I think that's a big thing there, is to say that it's not one or the other, it's that we're providing that addition, that missing piece in year 11 and 12 that so many schools are calling out for. So like Fabi said earlier on, these programs have become in response to secondary schools. We haven't necessarily, as a university, gone, oh, we need to put these into schools. Schools very much in the West Australian context, and I know that Fabi has experienced this over in Queensland, and Johanna, one of our other project partners, has experienced this in New South Wales, that schools are coming to us asking for these programs and are very much part of that partnership model that Anita is going to speak to in a little bit. So if we just look at our in-school enabling program cohort for that 2021 to 2023, those, we had a large proportion from equity cohorts. So really 41% was our kind of average. And then when we're looking at, and that there was a huge range across the programs. And I think that really is dependent on the high schools we're actually working with as well. We've got quite a range of high schools across the programs. But really what it does is that data only comes through if the students identify it on enrolment. So it probably actually underestimates the volume of students experiencing educational disadvantage in our program. So just to keep that in mind. So when we're looking at success rates, students completing the course, again, really high success rates, and we're really proud of that. I don't think you could ever have an in-school enabling program that has 100% success rate, because anyone who works with 16 and 17-year-olds knows that those years are hugely dynamic in their lives, and really formative years for how they go on to be well-supported adult learners. So when we're looking at conversion, we are really proud as 4 universities and a national kind of team to say that 50% of our students who completed in-school enabling programs went on to commence a university degree within 1 or 2 years of completing an in-school enabling program. But again, sometimes the way that that data comes through can be restricted. So we probably think it's more than 50%. I'm going to say, but not something that we can necessarily articulate in the project. Okay, I'm just going to talk quickly about the benchmarking report, therefore, and then hand over to Anita. So as Fabi said and Ange pointed out, a big part of this project was doing a benchmarking report, and that was broken down into 3 phases. And it really, what it indicated was that there was robust academic preparation through these programs, and really demystified what the expectations and understandings of university were. So what we found across all of the programs is that we all had a partnership model. As I said, it wasn't a university going in and imposing a program on a high school. It was genuine partnership between the high schools and the universities. Across our programs, we actually all had common course learning outcomes. And I think that comes from having that national body in NAEEA and the rich research they've had for the 3 decades to determine those common learning outcomes. What we also all had was scaffolded curriculum. Now, I think this comes through because many of the educators within in-school enabling programs actually have high school teaching experience. So we've been grown in scaffolded pedagogy. We've been grown in gradual release responsibility models of learning, and that definitely came through when we did our benchmarking report. What we also found with the benchmarking was higher levels of academics success, but there was also that bit of a challenge in then converting to to that home university. And we don't really have time to unpack it in this webinar, but Ange will speak more to that in December, especially when we're looking at the financial circumstances of our students. There was a real resilience that came through in the academic success, and that our program actually did more than just the academic. It was those well-being, going back to Trixie's article about building hope and that theory of hope. And then therefore that led to the program's improving social emotional journeys and well-being. We're not going to go through the educator and the student interviews here, but large amounts of those comments in there spoke about that and then tied it back into this benchmarking report. And I suppose it's not really the main thing, but I suppose what governments are looking at is that is there that conversion and that genuine preparedness for that first year of university or even second year of university. So I'll hand over to Anita now to discuss, you know, one of the outputs for our project.
Thanks, Selena. I think that slide just speaks to as well the models that you were talking about, the partnership models and the variation of partnership models, Selena.
I forgot to go to my next slide. Sorry, I got so caught up in that. This is probably actually one of the most important things, that from all of that benchmarking and all that data, what we were able to one of the things that we were able to distill was a typology of in-school enabling programs. And this is really important in guiding universities who are embarking into this space and schools who are looking at contacting universities. So I know for the special interest group that I co-facilitate with Johanna, which I'll talk about at the end, having a typology was really one of our key goals for 2026. And that's what this kind of slide here articulates, especially in terms of delivery models. There was different delivery models across all 4 programs. Okay, now I'm going to hand to you, Anita.
All right, I'll go to the next slide. Thanks. Okay, so implementation guide, I think it became part of the project as well because there was such growing interest in school enabling programs across the country, and the programs that we had, they were growing as well. And the implementation guide was really driven by that commitment to transformative practice and best practice so that our students had those clear paths. And that's what we really wanted the implementation guide to communicate to schools and university about what best practice looks like and how they could go about finding and acquiring and creating best practice. So the implementation guide, we conceived it split into kind of these 3 phases. And in the first one, in the engage phase, is where the schools or the universities are just in the early consideration journey, I suppose you could say, on what should we offer a school or what should we ask from a university in terms of an in-school enabling program. And so in the first phase, there's recommendations around how to identify target cohorts and the equity priorities, the importance of establishing shared goals between the partnerships, and genuinely assessing the available resources at the school level, but also at the university level. And the resources are far and wide, even down to staffing at the university level, or, you know, preparedness of the staff in the school level. In the second phase of the implementation guide, it unpacks for schools and universities the key actions that they need to do to integrate that model successfully into the school. So that's when you're really looking at practice on the ground, piloting the program in the first years. And yeah, as it says in that last point, really establishing the program in the high school ecosystem. In the third phase of implementation, like any good program, it looks at the importance of evolving the partnership and evolving the program, making sure that the program is evaluated for student outcomes and communicated quite clearly to all the stakeholders, and that ongoing refinement as well of curriculum, for example. in the implementation guide itself, we were really quite careful about it being a document that easily and quickly communicated the fundamentals to schools and universities. So we divided it into 2 sections. We wanted it to be for a high school principal that could pick it up and have some just quick bedtime reading or just, you know, be able to get the key bits out of it very quickly, because we realized that they're very busy people. And section 2 as well was for advice for universities, which possibly would get a little bit more bogged down in some detail, because that's the way university academics roll. So each section is really organized around readability, I suppose you could say, explaining the phase, some guiding questions. We wanted it to be a reflective document as well that would encourage either the schools or the universities to thinking about best practice and needs. And visual, I think Selena did a marvelous job of making it very, very attractive and easy to read as well. And then the evidence that we drew from our data as well, we popped in some great quotes there about best practice. And then just some, if you don't do anything else, just a few quick steps that you do. So I think that's my slides on the implementation guide. It was a very interesting document to help write.
Yeah, it was quite a process, like having really understanding how to put all of this into easy speak for the range of stakeholders who look at that. So I'll kind of just bring it home with kind of next steps, because it's really, like, it's been a fantastic 2 years. It's been a challenging 2 years of putting this project together. But this is really where, and the special interest groups that Ange had on one of the initial slides, this is really where now the special interest group for in-school enabling programs kind of steps in and takes up the next part of where we roll this project. So we've already started that process. We are doing a special grant with NAEEA looking at, we're going to kind of drill down into the fine detail now. So what we're looking at first is the assessment design in in-school enabling programs to actual first year university. And what we want to look at is, in a simple way, what does the essay look like in an in-school enabling program? And then what does it look like in first year university? What does an oral presentation or something like a Viva look like in a high school setting compared to first year university? And one of the things that we want to get out of this project is having more dialogue between senior school teachers and first year academics in that sharing of knowledge. So the beautiful thing about this is that we've been able to add 4 or 5 more universities to this project now across Australia. Some have got established in-school enabling programs, some are just starting out in this space. So it's really been fantastic to bring more universities together in discussing this. So that research is underway. We've got MOUs that have been signed. We've got shared ethics that's been passed through all universities. We will start our data collection in about 2 weeks' time, and then hopefully be able to present on some rich data on that at the NAEEA conference coming up in December. So I'll hand back over to Ange for kind of the Q&A and kind of next steps.
I have my mic on. Thank you, Selena, Anita, Fabi, and we have some of our other researchers, Joe and Mike and Shaz in the audience today. So yeah, thank you all for your contributions to the project, which I had the pleasure of leading, as well as all these fabulous outcomes that we're seeing presented at the webinar, and we said also in the at the conference at the end of this year. So now I'll open the floor for questions. Either you can put your mic on or put them in the chat if anyone would like to ask any questions of our team. You've just stunned everyone with your project. Yes. So Colsum, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yes, we're the schools chosen across Australia. So the schools were partnership schools who were involved in the in-school enabling programs through their respective university. Selena, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, because I suppose Western Australia has the longest history with these programs, there were many schools who were from Western Australia, but yeah, we had schools from Queensland and schools from New South Wales as well, who were involved with the data, student and educator interviews.
As well as would be wrapped up in the institutional data that the students were from those schools too. We have any other questions? Did any of our team want to add anything that we haven't covered in the presentation about the project or any challenges?
And I'll just say that there's a lot of data that's in the actual report than what we showed today. So if you've got the time to have a little mull through the report, you might find it interesting.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the data, so Fabi and I shared some of the data at Fabiane's, the Foundation Bridging conference in New Zealand last year, and we will be sharing more at the conference this year and focusing on the student survey and student interview data, as well as the educator interview data, because we haven't really spent as much time unpacking that and what that is showing around the importance of social and emotional learning and considerations for designing in-school enabling programs. So we'll really kind of do a deep dive into that and why it's so important for our students from underrepresented backgrounds within in-school enabling programs as well. So that'll be some of the content that we'll really kind of look at. I guess from the audience as well, does anyone have any questions about the design process as well? Because it was a pretty massive project. So I wasn't sure if anyone had any questions around that too. Sorry, Nate, I cut you off.
Oh, I was just going to add that in the benchmarking report as well, in the finding at the end, there's some considerations, the recommendations about further defining a high school student cohort need, because they are a different cohort to a post-school enabling cohort. And yeah, if people want to think about more about that as they're designing, then that would go and have a look at the benchmarking report at the end.
And all of our recommendations from the project are, have been taken to our NAEEA executive as well, which will be kind of unpacked over time. So the one thing I was going to add is that our benchmarking was in alignment with what NAEEA has previously done. So we're really trying to make sure what we're doing and how we're benchmarking and analysing and assessing these programs for their rigour, for their efficacy, is in alignment with the sector as well, to really demonstrate. And it goes back to what Selena was saying right at the beginning around that discourse of enabling and the subdiscipline that we are kind of the world of enabling that we're existing in now, which is a fabulous time to be in. That it's so important that this research that we're doing is important in its own right for like what it's saying about the efficacy of these programs and how it's supporting students, but also that we are trying to show how our assessment and approaches to analysis and benchmarking is really showcasing the enabling discipline too, and showing that alignment between universities and across the country in all different kinds of modes of enabling, I guess. Is there anything anyone from the team would like to add to that? Nope, we're all good. If there's no other questions from our audience, I will wrap us up early and say a big thank you to everyone for attending today, to our presenters for walking us through the data. If you'd like to take the survey for feedback on this webinar, there is a QR code on our screen that you can click through. And our next webinar, which will be next month on the 18th of September, is with Professor Anna Bennett and Dr. Joe Hanley, and they will be talking about their fee-free Uni-Ready project and the outcomes of that and best practice in this space. So that'll be a great webinar to attend. I feel like it's got great alignment with this webinar as well. So yeah, I encourage you all to register for that one. The registration will go out next week, will be available to register next week. And I think this is also another fabulous example of research that's really important research that's coming out in the sector too. And that is not a slide at all. That is an empty text in 24 Calibri. So I'm going to leave it there. If you'd like to hear more about our project, please register and come along to the NAEEA conference in Perth. It's going to be a great time. We're doing part at Murdoch for workshops and part at ECU Brand New City Campus in Yagan Square, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and there's going to be some really great research shared in December. So that's it from me and the team. I will give you back 17 minutes in your day, and we'll see you at the next one.